Hello, I'm Dr. Sandra Cabot. Welcome to my webinars where I share information to give you knowledge and clarity to enhance your health and well-being. I've been a medical doctor for over 50 years and I know that knowledge is power. So let's go. Hello, everyone. And
Good afternoon,
hello,
Sandra.
Igor. It's great to see you again, Igor.
Great to see you
Yeah,
too. Hope you're well.
yeah, thankfully
You've been
everything's
traveling
well.
around.
Yeah, I've been doing seminars. Been to Perth in Western Australia. That was great. And going to Melbourne this weekend. Yeah, so busy meeting a lot of people. Fantastic. And
Wonderful.
today is going to be really interesting because we're talking about autoimmune disease. And this is something that we see a lot. We have a lot of patients with autoimmune disease. So we've got a great slideshow here for everyone. And I know, Igor, that you've had autoimmune disease, so you know what it's like first time,
Nice.
firsthand, don't you? So,
Yeah,
it
definitely.
catches people unaware. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go into my story during my slide, but yeah, I've had it for 7 years now.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
you're very healthy at the moment, thanks to nutritional medicine. But what is autoimmune disease? It's opposite to what is normal. Your immune system is designed to protect you against inflammation, cancer, and infection, and to slow down aging. So it's a very important part of your body. And it's a big system. It consists of white blood cells, and the cells are made in your bone marrow, your lymphatic system, your lymph nodes, your thymus gland, your spleen, your liver, your gut. So it's widespread throughout your body. But what happens in autoimmune disease is instead of your immune system protecting you, it actually starts to attack you. So it becomes an enemy instead of your greatest friend. And it can be chronic, so not too obvious, just insidious and smouldering away in your body, and you just don't feel well. Or it can be a rapid onset, what we call acute onset, and very aggressive, very violent, and without the appropriate drug treatment, it can kill you quite quickly. So there's a broad spectrum of severity and types of presentation of autoimmune disease. It also is more common in women. Now, there's lots of different types of autoimmune disease, and this slide shows you up the top there, the most common autoimmune disease in the world is Hashimoto's, which was named after Dr. Hashimoto, obviously a Japanese doctor, and that is the name we give to autoimmune thyroid disease. So when your immune system attacks your thyroid, it produces these little missiles we call antibodies, and it sends them to the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland is a target of these missiles, and these antibodies will destroy your thyroid gland. So you develop an underactive thyroid gland that's not able to produce thyroid hormone, and it becomes very, very underactive. And your immune system can also attack pretty well any other part of your body. So there's lots of other autoimmune diseases. If it attacks your intestines, we could call it Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. If it attacks your arteries, it's called arteritis. If it attacks your muscles, it's called polymyositis or polymyalgia rheumatica. If it attacks your joints, you could get arthritis, either rheumatoid arthritis or psoriatic arthritis. If it attacks your skin, you could get psoriasis. So you can see that it could present in many different ways, right? Yeah. Now, unfortunately, over the last 50 years, autoimmune disease has risen in incidence. And, you can see here that Crohn's disease in the blue line, you can see how much that has gone up. That's the disease where your immune system is attacking your ileum, part of your small intestine, or your colon. You can see that type 1 diabetes has increased dramatically. So that's an autoimmune disease. You can see that multiple sclerosis has increased. That's where your immune system is attacking the myelin sheaths around your nerves. You can see that asthma has increased. So overall, autoimmune disease has been increasing a lot over the last 50 years or even 70 years, and it continues to increase. So depending on which part of your immune system is attacking, you could get different symptoms. Let's say it's causing a lot of inflammation, even in the brain, it can attack the brain. You could find that you're getting a foggy brain and your memory is not as good. A dry mouth, dry eyes, if it's attacking your mucous membranes, muscle weakness and pain, skin rashes, headaches, particularly if it's attacking the arteries in your head or the membranes around your brain. So, the symptoms can vary a lot. So let's look at what causes autoimmune disease. Well, there is usually a genetic predilection. So know your family history. If there's a strong family history of autoimmune disease, for example, Hashimoto's or Crohn's disease or rheumatoid arthritis or ankylosing spondylitis, it's more likely that you will get autoimmune disease. You've got those genes that predispose your immune system to attacking you. Also, we know that people have gut problems, particularly leaky gut, are more susceptible. And there can be environmental triggers. So childbirth, often women will get an autoimmune disease after a child is born. It could be vaccination that sets it off. It could be exposure to mold toxin or an infection, a virus. So all sorts of different infections. So we know there's certain genes that predispose to autoimmunity, and we can test for those in a blood test. We can see if you've got the HLA-DQ genes that predispose you to celiac disease, which is where gluten in the food will attack your small intestine, and that will cause malnutrition. But the gluten intolerant genes can also predispose you to other autoimmune disease like arthritis or psoriasis or thyroid problems. So we can test for those genes with a blood test. Now, whether they will express themselves and cause disease is not always guaranteed. It depends on your diet and your lifestyle and your environment. So let's look at leaky gut. Now you can see here on the left, that's a healthy gut. And you can see those pink cells that are lining the gut are all close together, aren't they? They don't have spaces in between them. You can see on the right that the cells lining the gut look damaged, don't they? They're a little bit shrunken and they have spaces between them. And through those spaces, we can have contents in the gut leaking directly into the bloodstream. And those things should not be getting from your intestines into your blood. We can also see that bacteria or toxins could leak from the gut into the bloodstream, and that is going to set off an inflammatory reaction. So it's very important that we improve your gut health if you've got autoimmune disease. We know that people who eat a lot of wheat and cereal grains may have a higher risk if they have got the gluten intolerant genes, and they may do much better with a grain-free diet. It's trial and error. And interestingly, it takes about 6 to 12 months for dietary modification to really be able to change the course of the disease. So you might try a grain-free diet for a week. It's not going to do it. You know, you really need to do it for longer. Also, we know that pesticides that are used in our food production can be very liver toxic and also damage the gut and cause a leaky gut. So it's very important that people reduce their exposure to pesticides by washing their fruit and vegetables, washing their meat, and washing the plastic off food, and, you know, use a good water filter.
Sandra, quick question. Have you, so in Australia, something I learned, I'm not sure if this is practiced all around the world. I think they might have banned some of these practices in Europe. But what they do is obviously we use glyphosate, and that's been, there's some research around how that can actually create leaky gut on its own. And what they do with wheat, which actually ends up as residue in our wheat products, so in our bread, in different wheat products, is they spray it just before they're about to harvest to kill it and dry it out as a desiccant. And that practice results in the residue being in our wheat products, and that's a big cause of leaky gut. And it's really interesting because I find that when I go to Europe, I'll have bread, and it doesn't cause that gluten response that it does in Australia. So
Yes.
even though it's got gluten, and I think a big part of that is because of the glyphosate.
Yes, well, unfortunately in Australia we use pesticides that have been banned in other parts of the world. So that's disappointing, but some people will feel a lot better without grains. And I've heard that before, Igor, that, you know, people can eat wheat in Europe, but they can't eat it in Australia. So if you have autoimmune disease, what we need to do? Well, we need to check if your nutrient deficiencies, because they will make it worse. We need to heal your gut, particularly if you have a leaky gut or you have a weak digestive system. Maybe you're not making enough stomach acid or bile or digestive enzyme. And we need to support your liver, because your liver is a very important part of your immune system. Indeed, your liver protects your immune system from overload or being overworked. So what are some of the common deficiencies we see in people with autoimmune disease? Vitamin D. And, you know, particularly if you live in countries where there's not a lot of sun, this is more likely. So have a blood test to check your vitamin D level. You want your vitamin D level to be towards the top of the normal range, not just average, if you have an inflammatory autoimmune disease. Now, selenium is a mineral that I use a lot. And specifically in autoimmune disease, it reduces antibodies. And antibodies are the little missiles that your immune system produces that attack your tissues. So a lot of studies show that selenium can reduce antibody levels in different types of autoimmune disease. Also, magnesium. We know that magnesium deficiency will cause poor function of the mitochondria, so your cells have less energy to protect themselves, and contribute to poor sleep and anxiety. And if you have autoimmune disease, you need to get good sleep, because that's when your body repairs itself. And another deficiency that is very common is iodine. And we can measure this in a urine test, and that is an important mineral for a healthy immune system. So we can check all these deficiencies. Now, to heal the gut, we need to keep a food diary, right? And see what foods will cause a trigger. We've talked about gluten. It's a common offender in autoimmune disease. You don't have to be a celiac to be gluten intolerant. Dairy products in some people are inflammatory. Alcohol, seed oils, so in processed food, your omega-6 processed vegetable and seed oils are not good to ingest. Food additives, and foods with lectins like legumes and tomatoes. Some people are intolerant to lectins. So what I often say to people, look, if you have an autoimmune disease, a really good thing to do is to go on an elimination diet where you just put yourself, for example, on meat, fresh red meat and vegetables. And people have a lot of bloating. Maybe they want to try low FODMAP vegetables. But you just restrict what you're eating down to about 5 foods. And you do that for 6 weeks and see the result. So there's lots of information on the internet about elimination diets and a diet in particular called the GAPS diet, which can be helpful. GAPS, GAPS diet. And you keep a food diary, and then once you start to improve, you can introduce one food at a time and see the reaction. For example, some people with autoimmune arthritis are intolerant to the nightshade foods. So your white potatoes, they're okay with other potatoes, but white potatoes cause a problem with tomatoes, eggplant, and capsicums and peppers. So when they give up the nightshades, they get a big improvement. But not everyone. So that's why food diary and trial and error is so good.
Yeah, when I first got alopecia, I had to switch to. I tried the autoimmune protocol diet, which is basically what you explained, but I think it was even stricter. Like I cut out nightshades from what I remember. So it wasn't really much. It was hard, but it was. I really noticed the impact because I was so sensitive when it first happened, and I was just reacting to everything. At the moment I just really cut it down to the autoimmune protocol, I was actually, I wasn't getting that the severe gut pains, and a lot of my symptoms really calmed down. It took a while, and then bit by bit, I was just introducing one food group a week just to see how it would impact me.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's right. It's trial and error because we're all different. We all have different genes. I mean, we can share the genes for gluten intolerance. And that is a sign that you're probably better without gluten. But with the nightshades, we don't have a genetic pattern to say, well, you shouldn't eat nightshades. It's just trial and error, and everyone's different. So you really need to keep the food diary. Now, another common issue in people with autoimmune disease is lack of pancreatic enzymes or bile or hydrochloric acid. So you can get a really good product called super digestive enzymes, and they are a combination of pancreas digestive enzymes and bile and hydrochloric acid. So some people find them really helpful. You take the super digestive enzymes in the middle of your meal. The other thing to be aware of is that everyone with autoimmune disease has some degree of dysbiosis, which means unfriendly bacteria in predominance, so an overgrowth of bad gut bacteria. And this can be in the small gut, so we call it small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and we can use herbal antimicrobials. And sometimes we need to use targeted antibiotics, ones that aren't absorbed from the gut into the bloodstream. And so people can have a microbiome test of their feces and see what's happening, or a breath test to see if they've got the SIBO, the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that can be treated with things like Bactoclear, which contains your oregano, thyme, and clove, all those essential oils. The other thing that sometimes helps a lot is reducing FODMAPs. So go on a low FODMAP diet, and that could starve the bad bacteria and get rid of your bloating. Okay, so improving your liver function. Now, if you have a leaky gut, what happens is things leak from the gut straight back to the liver, and that overloads the liver. And then you get an increased production of inflammatory chemicals. You may have heard of C-reactive protein, CRP. So we can measure that in a blood test. So if you've got elevated C-reactive protein, we really need to support your liver function and get that down, which we can do. The other thing I'd like to mention too, in women with autoimmune disease, Igor, is they'll often get a flare up premenstrually. So in the 1 to 2 weeks before their menstrual bleeding, the drop in progesterone will cause the inflammation to go up higher. So we can use a natural progesterone cream that is just rubbed into the skin, or natural progesterone capsules for those 2 weeks before menstrual bleeding. And we can also use them in the postnatal period if a woman has an onset of inflammatory autoimmune disease after the baby's born. We can use the bioidentical progesterone, and that will not interfere with breastfeeding and can help postnatal depression as well, because postnatal depression can be partly due to brain inflammation from the sudden loss of progesterone.
Really? I haven't heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Progesterone is an amazing hormone that, has so many advantages for reducing inflammation and also for improving mood. And people can get very depressed when they get an autoimmune disease. Yeah.
And from what I remember when I was reading about fasting, progesterone is often when women get the cravings for carbs during that period of their cycle, because they actually need carbohydrates to produce progesterone. Is that right?
No, you just need healthy fats and protein.
Oh, okay.
You don't know. Your liver can make glucose. Your liver can make glucose out of protein and fat. So you really don't need carbs. Of course, if you're insulin resistant, you really don't want to increase your carbs. So, yeah, the liver will make the glucose that you need. So, do you have some slides for us, Igor?
I do, yes. Yeah, thanks for that, Sandra.
Right, them, yeah. And then we've got some comments. We've got a few people asking questions.
A lot of questions.
Yeah.
Love that. All right, cool. Here's my slide deck. So, yeah, just dovetailing what you've explained. So as we know, it's when the immune system mistakenly attacks the body's own healthy tissues. In my case, actually, I'll talk a bit about that at the last slide. So I've got my sort of story I can share.
Great.
So as we know, common examples. I think there's I've heard over 60. I've even heard estimates as high as 120 autoimmune conditions. And something that I found interesting through my health journey is if you don't address your autoimmune condition, then you're 3 times more likely to get another one. And I've seen that in other people that didn't necessarily diagnose it in time, and then they were on to their second by the time they're diagnosed. So it's something that really we need to address the moment you notice something unusual that could resemble an autoimmune condition.
Exactly. And particularly in young people, because otherwise they would face a life of taking a strong immunosuppressant drug. So the earlier we pick it up, the better, by looking for antibodies and looking at the CRP to see if there's inflammation, and treating the cause, the gut, the liver, nutrient deficiencies, food intolerances, because you can often fix it by treating the cause, and that can avoid a lifetime of really strong immunosuppressant drugs. Of course, we're not saying this is medical advice, we're talking generally. But, people have a difficult decision if they're young and they then think, well, I'm going to be taking a drug that could increase my risk of cancer and serious infections. What else can I do? So it's very important to understand the cause.
For sure. And when you go to your GP, don't get me wrong, GPs are fantastic, but more often than not, they will prescribe like a corticosteroid to actually address the symptom. So that's why it's important to actually dig deeper and try and find the cause through someone like Sandra, or often naturopaths and functional medicine practitioners are also really good at just sort of putting on the detective hat and
Yeah,
really get into the root cause. So
that's right. Don't give up. You have to be a
no,
detective.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so underlying drivers, chronic inflammation, you've talked about that. But yeah, something that Sandra hasn't talked about, which is why I'm here and I really want to go into, is actually the other drivers being which are worsened, which worsen the conditions, such as long-term stress and emotional trauma. So just going
Yes.
to role of chronic stress. So I thought I changed that image. Anyway, I had a stress image. I think that's the last image. Yeah, so chronic stress activates the HPA axis, and that's all. That's what ultimately that is in charge of producing your cortisol. So that's that's what ultimately puts us into a state of fight or flight.
Correct.
And yeah, so when this is great evolutionary adaptation for us when there's something immediately dangerous. So we see a snake, we our body's flooded with cortisol. All of a sudden, like it opens up our glucose reserves, and we're able to run away. We're able to fight the snake or whatever, or freeze and pretend like we're not there, and the snake will slither away. It's a great response that's kept us alive for over 300,000 years. However, we don't live in that environment anymore. We don't find those immediate threats to our life living in a city or living in the suburbs. However, the same response happens um, when we're fearing that work deadline, or when we've got issues with our spouse, or when we've got issues, whatever it is that is causing you stress. Often these causes are long term, and that's when that HbA axis regulation comes in, and that can lead to autoimmune conditions. So,
Yes.
so that, yeah, so, yeah.
That's
So we're
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also through the vagus nerve.
Hmm.
If you've got chronic stress, well, that affects the vagus nerve, which is a cranial nerve, and that's supplying all your internal organs and your gut health, your bile, your pancreas. So everything's related, and stress is such a big thing. People learning how to cope with stress and learning how to tap into the relaxing energy inside of them. Having those strategies is so important. Yes.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. And this emotional suppression, unresolved trauma, and limiting beliefs, they can all lead to chronic stress. So if you're thinking because maybe whatever something happened when you were younger, and that led you to that limiting belief of I'm not good enough, then or maybe feelings of rejection, then anytime you perceive that, then that can be stressful as well, and that can have the exact same effect as if there's a snake there. It's the exact same mechanism.
Yes.
So yeah, it's you can eat all the right foods, you can do all the right, you can get enough vitamin D, so you can do all the things that Sandra suggested, which is great from a health perspective. But if you're perceiving that fear, you're putting yourself in a fight or flight response all the time, then you're still going to have the same physiological response, which is not good long term. That can lead to autoimmune conditions.
Exactly.
So
100%. Mm.
Oh, it's weird. I updated the images, but it didn't update here. I think it might be, I don't know what happened. Next time I'll have to update the images and then present the slides. So now I know for future.
We're still
Um,
new to this StreamYard. Yeah.
yeah, so we're getting there. Learn
Mhm.
something new about our streaming platform every week.
Yes.
Um, how can neurolinguistic programming help? Neurolinguistic programming is ultimately the language of the mind, and it's how we can rewire our subconscious mind. So this is not surface level. This is really root cause work. And
Yes.
um, and this is what I do through my coaching practice. And this is
Yes.
something that you can already start doing on your own. But ultimately, to get the most effect, it's really important to work with an NLP coach like
Yes.
myself, and there's plenty of others out there. So, first of all, we can like some of these tools include like reframe, so shifting limiting beliefs, and installing empowering ones. So, the belief that I'm not good enough. Um, once we question it, we write it down. Like, so I think I'm not good enough. Okay, what are all the times when I actually was good enough? You practice the NLP techniques and you go, well, I was good enough on this time, I was good enough on this time, and I do really well in these situations. Okay, you start looking for holes in that limiting belief. And then you might even say something that Tony Robbins does is say it in a funny voice, what would I'm not good enough sound in like a silly voice? And you just imagine your silliest voice. And then you kind of like laugh it off. You're like, what was I thinking? I'm not good enough. And then once you start sort of finding holes and reframing it, then you can replace it with something that is empowering. It could be
Yes.
that I'm always learning and I'm always getting better. Every day I'm getting better and every day I'm getting stronger. So
Yes.
it's a far more empowering belief. And that belief actually doesn't, instead of putting you in a fight and chronic stress situation, response, emotional and physiological response, you actually, your cells are no longer in contraction or in expansion. And
Yes.
and this affects you on a physiological and cellular basis, which is quite interesting. The work of um, Dr. Bruce Lipton around the cells and how that's impacted by our thoughts and our perceptions is really fascinating. Biology of Belief is one of my most pivotal books, if anyone's curious to dig deeper around that.
Yeah.
So anchoring is another really good one. So if you find that you're coming into work and you're automatically like going into that stress response, it might be worth installing an anchor. So um, it could be as soon as you enter that door, you think you take a moment out and you think, okay, what's the most calm that I've ever felt in my life, and you imagine that for a minute, and then
Mm.
you start attaching that feeling of calm to that doorway, or it could be the plant on your desk, or it could be whatever it is. I mean, visual, physical. That's something that I can go more into coaching if we decide to work together. But
Yeah.
anchoring is a really powerful technique. Um,
Yes.
Switch patterns is another one, and that's like you're replacing the attributes of something that you find um, brings up bad emotions, something that brings up good emotions. That's a really powerful technique. Submodality shifts, yeah, that's a really interesting one. So that's when you're actually, yeah, it's quite a complex one. I don't know if I'll have capacity to go into that. So that's
We'll do that
but
another time.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Timeline therapy is kind of the crux of my coaching program at the moment. Um, so that's all around. Uh, so that's all around actually going back to the root cause. Uh, so the root cause of the emotion. So we're going back to the root emotional pattern. So it could be the first time you felt anger, and as we know, our subconscious mind is developed during our formative years, so from birth to around sort of 7 or 8 years old,
Yes.
and these patterns stay with us for the rest of our lives until we actually come back through a process like timeline therapy. There's many others that address the root cause. So that's the crux of my program, my
Mm.
coaching program, and by actually addressing and clearing the emotions and actually taking the learnings from those initial experiences. That's ultimately what PTSD is. It's our unconscious mind trying to go back to that traumatic event and take away the learnings in a safe space so you're not re-experiencing it and adding to the trauma. And that's how
Yeah.
timeline therapy works, by actually
Mm.
being disassociated from that emotion, but still going back there subconsciously and taking the learnings. We're able to um, take away the sting, the emotional sting, and then we're actually able to do that through all the subsequent experiences of that emotion up to the present moment. And then we're
Yes.
able to, and people like my clients, they always walk away and they always tell me that they feel lighter and they feel more present, and they're not necessarily resorting to that immediate unconscious response of anger or sadness or fear or guilt or whatever it is that's putting them in that flight or flight response.
Right.
So they're able to be calm and then decide how you want to respond, which is a far more empowering way to be.
Yes, I agree. Shall we take a few questions?
Oh, I've just got a few more slides. So,
Okay.
yeah, we've still got time. So we're 36 minutes in. Yeah, I've still got a few more slides. So,
Yeah.
mind body reset. So by releasing those emotionally blocks, yeah, like I said, people often their flare-ups, the symptoms reduce, which is quite interesting. So really seeing that
Yes.
mind-body connection there in take effect. The increased energy, motivation. Something I noticed when I did the inner work is my insomnia was gone. I still get some bad nights from time to time, but nothing as chronic as before.
Yes.
Yeah, my
Sleep.
autoimmune conditions really weakened, so I don't have that response to food like I used to. Even some of my hair started growing back in patches, which is
Great.
interesting. Well, my wife's not a huge fan because she likes my new look, but you know,
You must look. Yeah.
definitely a good sign. And I've seen that in so many other of my patients and friends that have done that inner work as well, which is beautiful to see.
Yes.
So yeah, so my personal experience, I won't spend too much time on it, but when about 7 years ago, when I was in Rio de Janeiro for Carnival, on as part of a much bigger South America trip, it was a beautiful, amazing, incredible journey.
Yeah.
I was one morning I was waking up and I was getting ready for Carnival, and I was
Yeah.
having a shower in my hostel, and I was drying off, and all of a sudden I noticed like all this hair in my towel, and I thought that's weird. So I looked in the mirror, and sure enough, like literally overnight, my hair had fallen out, and the next couple of days, my eyebrows fell out, my eyelashes, everything. Um,
Yeah. You
and
had
that was
alopecia totalis.
that's
Or
right, yeah,
your
and
immune system attacked all your hair follicles all over your body. Yeah.
exactly. So, and that
Yeah.
that manifested not just in my hair, but all of a sudden I was sensitive to every food. So I had to I couldn't travel anymore because
Right.
unless it's very hard to cook for yourself when you're traveling, and um, so
Yeah.
I just
Yeah. Yeah.
and I didn't know what it was, so I went straight back to Australia. Started working with a functional medicine practitioner, and actually the warning signs were there. I was starting to get like patches, bald patches on my beard, which I didn't pay much attention to. I thought, well, if people get bald patches on their head, they must get bald patches on their beard. So I just thought it was normal aging. But actually, it was an early sign. So if anyone gets bald patches, any guy gets bald patches on their facial hair, then that's something that you really need to consider and look into and not ignore.
Yes.
So that was actually the final straw with my body, because I was up to that point I was experiencing um, I wasn't able to sleep, so I had insomnia. I had hormone issues around testosterone. It actually dropped to very low levels, so I had to get injections. So that
Wow.
that was my body telling me like wake up and actually start putting yourself first and addressing my root cause of chronic stress. Like
Yes.
through that time, I was my mum was in a very bad way, and I was like taking it upon myself to help heal her and help her, and I was on top of that, I was you know taking on the good fight of climate change, and I was running a non-profit, and I was doing that full time and working full time and taking on
Yeah.
my mum full time. So it was just too much. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't putting myself forward at first at all.
No.
And as a result, I lost a lot of friendships and relationships, and I just thought, well, these are all things that I have to sacrifice to do these things. But it's at
Yes.
the end of the day, if we're not if we don't look after our health and don't put ourselves first, then we can't be there for our friends and family, our community, and let alone our planet. So that was a hard lesson to learn, and that was the final wake up call that my body needed to make to shake me out of that
Yeah.
situation and actually
Well,
start looking after myself.
you had adrenal gland exhaustion. So that's
Yeah.
something to definitely do a webinar on, is adrenal gland function and, the different degrees of adrenal gland dysfunction, from mild to severe to adrenal gland failure. That
Hmm.
your adrenals just couldn't take it anymore. They were
Yeah,
they were
definitely.
overloaded and not producing enough cortisone, or it was going up and down like a yo-yo, your cortisol level.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what my functional medicine practitioner told me. That's something we measured, like when we were doing all the hormone tests and HPA
Yes.
axis dysregulation as well. Had the gut
Yeah.
biome test as well, and just trying to put everything back in balance,
Yeah.
physiologically and also mentally as well. So it's kind of all at once, and I had to spend the next year looking after myself and putting my diet back in balance. Bringing strains of gut bacteria into my gut biome that were not there, and feeding the good ones and starving the bad ones, getting my
Yeah.
hormones back in balance, everything.
Yeah.
So that was
That's
part of
right.
my journey of moving up to Cairns. Is a lot of the things my functional medicine practitioner asked me to change was up here. Plenty of vitamin D, plenty of access to nature, low stress environments. So that was part of my journey of moving up here as well,
Yeah.
which I'm
Well,
grateful. I'm grateful for. At the end of the day, I'm grateful for it because I'm grateful for my autoimmune condition because it actually was that wake up call that I needed to start putting myself forward, putting myself first, and start looking after myself. So
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's what I needed at the time.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you've
So
done so well. Now your health is fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. I
Hmm.
need and that's exactly what I needed to do. So yeah, last things, if anyone wants to take a screenshot of this, maybe scan the QR code. I've got a free tool called the Rapid Emotional Reset Method. It's basically a breathing exercise and just to reset and set your intention for the rest of the day. Anytime you're feeling just stressed or angry or whatever it is, you're just feeling a flood of whatever emotion. This is a really powerful tool, and I actually narrate it, so you can take a screenshot of that, and I can send that to your email, and you can start using that straight away. It just takes 5 minutes. A really powerful tool, and I've got a PDF there as well. So if you're somewhere where you can't listen to it, you can just go through it in the printout or on your phone or whatever. So that's there if you guys want to try that out. And if anyone's curious about coaching, I've got a really powerful program called Freedom of Stagnation with timeline therapy at the core, and that's been really powerful in helping my clients since I've started offering that program. Really creating that lasting change and addressing the root cause emotions, which lead to physical stress, physical manifestations of chronic stress. So
Yeah.
that's what that's all about.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah. So, what do you reckon? We'll take a few questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Start from the
We've
top.
got one from Teresa. Hi, Teresa. So she's been a caregiver for a long time, and she's had underactive thyroid, and she's had long COVID. So, you would definitely have adrenal gland exhaustion. And she's had the Epstein-Barr virus, which is glandular fever, and it's not getting out of her body. And she's also a little bit overweight by the sounds of it. So you've probably got a bit of a fatty liver, and that is slowing down your recovery. So I would look at some of my videos on YouTube on fatty liver. They're very good. There's about 5 of them, and it tells you how to eat for a fatty liver. Also, anyone who's had a viral illness that they haven't fully recovered from, for example, cytomegalovirus or COVID or shingles or Epstein-Barr virus, which is a glandular fever, they would benefit from taking a selenium supplement, because selenium will reduce the total amount of virus in your body. Selenium are often given a nickname, the antiviral birth control pill. So if you're low in selenium, the viruses replicate more. You have a higher total viral load. Whereas if you've got plenty of selenium in your body, the viruses will be less active. They won't replicate so much, and also they won't mutate so much. So that's often the key to getting somebody well after they've had a chronic viral infection. And I would usually combine the selenium with N-acetylcysteine, because it gets rid of the biofilm that the viruses hide behind. Now, measuring the selenium in your body is not always going to tell you if you're selenium deficient, because selenium is found inside the nucleus of your cell. So a blood test is really only going to tell you if you've been taking a supplement. And indeed, some people who are selenium deficient, they'll start taking a supplement, then they'll have a blood test and they'll think, oh, they've got too much selenium in their body. But it's only showing that they're absorbing the selenium from their gut into their blood, and then the selenium's got to be incorporated inside your cells. So anyone with a chronic viral infection, they could have a blood test for selenium, but it's not really going to tell you if you are selenium deficient. So I would recommend a dose of around 100 to 200 micrograms a day. And it does take about 3 to 4 months for the selenium to get inside your cells. And, you know, one thing with autoimmune disease, you can get damage to your DNA, which is your chromosomes, right? And selenium is known to reduce damage to the DNA. It's like a little mechanic. It goes along the DNA and finds breakages and repairs them. So that would be something I would highly recommend there for Teresa. Yeah.
Fascinating. How do you know it takes 3 months to get into your cells?
Yeah.
Next one is Joanne.
Joanne. Hi, Joanne. You have an underactive thyroid. Yes, I told you that Hashimoto is the most common autoimmune disease in the world. Very common. So hopefully you're getting that under control. You're probably taking thyroxine, which is a synthetic thyroid hormone. Some people find that works very well. Some people do feel better on the pig's thyroid, which is bioidentical to human thyroid. It's a bit more expensive. And she has a question about aldosterone hormone. Now, that is a steroid hormone that's made by the adrenal glands, and that controls the electrolytes in your bloodstream, like your sodium and potassium, right? So she's had a test called aldosterone renin blood test and a 24-hour urine test, and she was put on a medication called spironolactone, which is an antagonist against aldosterone. So you are obviously making too much aldosterone, and that can cause fluid retention and high sodium, and that can put your blood pressure up. So they would have given you the medication spironolactone to lower your aldosterone. So that's fine. You know, you don't want high blood pressure and you don't want a lot of fluid retention. But remember, all of these problems can be helped with integrative medicine. You know, look at your diet. Are you having too much carbohydrate? Are you overweight? Are you insulin resistant? Are you suffering with really high levels of antibodies attacking your thyroid? If you are, you would benefit from selenium. Magnesium is a mineral that is very helpful for adrenal hyperplasia, which is the cause of high aldosterone. So, you know, look at your magnesium, your selenium, your diet, and you may find that you feel a lot better if you modify that. Now, you can always email us at liverdoctor.com, because I have a team of people and we answer people's questions. It's a free service, and I often answer the questions too, particularly the more complicated ones. So go to liverdoctor.com and send us your history, and you know, we can give you a few tips. Maybe you need some tests to check your iodine level. You could be low in iodine, which is not good if you have an underactive thyroid. And maybe they're tests that you and your doctor haven't thought of. So yeah, check out liverdoctor.com, and we love to hear from you. Send us an email.
Cool. So the next one is Tony. All doctors should promote this, love this. And then I think she had another question. Yeah, why is there so much autoimmune in the last 5 years?
Yes, well, it's been increasing really since a lot longer than that. Since the 1950s, it's been increasing. And I think it's because we have so much processed food now. We have food that contains omega-6 oils from seeds and vegetables. So vegetable and seed oils that you find in processed food are very bad for our cell membranes. And they're pro-inflammatory. Also, nutrient deficiencies, because our soils are depleted. I mean, I live in Australia and our soils are very selenium deficient. And that's one factor that would aggravate autoimmune disease and our risk of viral infections. People don't get enough sun. They're inside with artificial lighting. They're low in vitamin D. They also could be exposed to pesticides, insecticides, mold toxins. Some people react adversely to vaccinations. And they find that the more they have, the more inflammation they get. So there's many factors that increase our risk of autoimmune disease. Women in progesterone deficiency is another factor, because women are having children later in life, so they don't produce the large amounts of progesterone that we have during pregnancy. So there's all sorts of factors, but once again, treat the cause. And I've written a book on autoimmune disease, which you can get on Kindle or you can get from liverdoctor.com. And that goes into all that. But once again, send us an email and we're to help you.
I was just going to add, or not to mention, don't want to sound like a broken record, but yeah, just more and more chronic stress. I think as over the years, now we've got access to all the world's news at all times in our pocket, which is not healthy. I don't think we need to know of all the bloodshed going on in the world all at once. That puts us in that alone can put you in a state of fight or flight when you're worrying about things that you're outside of your control. Like because my background is Russian, and when the whole Ukraine war broke out, it was really horrible, and it was something I was following every day, and same with my mum, and eventually it started consuming me, and I was just like, I realized that I actually have to take a step back, because there's nothing I can do about it. Obviously I want peace. I don't want any bloodshed, but there's from my vantage point, all I could do was really donate to some charities, which is what I did, and then realized that I need to just focus on what impact can I have in my community, in my friends and family, to improve their sort of happiness and well-being. So it can be overwhelming with just so many things coming at us at all times.
You have to focus on the positive, and you have to believe in yourself. Persistence. Yeah, it's true that, and particularly if you're a sensitive person, you can become overwhelmed and dragged down. So, focus on what's important, what you can control, by improving your health, your good friends, mixing with positive people, I think. Enlighten people.
Exactly, yeah. They say that you can really tell a lot about the person by the 5 people they spend the most time with. So, something I do check in with myself, because I do journal, and I look at, okay, who am I spending most of my time with? Are these people bringing me up? Are these people bringing me down? And if they're bringing me down, then I need to see why, like what's going on. Is it something I can fix? If not, then maybe I need to spend less time with them. So it's something that we all need to be really aware of and reflect on regularly. And yeah, another habit that's really improved my happiness and well-being long term is daily gratitude. Every morning I wake up and I ask myself, what am I grateful for today? And it could be something as simple like, hey, I've got 5 fingers. I've got 10 fingers, so I can do the things I want to do. If I got 5 fingers, that might be a worry, but I still need to be grateful for the 5 fingers I got left.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when
So
you get older, it's even more important, because I'm in my mid-70s, and I always have gratitude, because I get up in the morning and think, well, everything's working. My arms, my legs, I'm walking great. I can still lift some weights. I still remember all my friends. My memory's good. So yeah, focus on the positive and that self-belief, and get in touch with the energy inside of you. If people are interested in meditation, I can put them in touch with the website, which has a really good meditation as well. And if you need support, you've got Igor's coaching service, because it's good to have someone to egg you along a bit, isn't it, to stretch you a little bit.
Definitely. These things can be really hard to do on your own, but the moment you start working with someone, they're not only sharing with you like everything they know that they can really customize towards your goals and your situation, but you've got someone that's your number one cheerleader, the number one accountability partner that's working in your corner. So it's really powerful to have a coach. There's
Yeah.
there if anyone wants to take a screenshot or a
Yes.
shameless plug.
Yeah, that's true. So here we have somebody, Joanne, and she's been feeling unwell for 2 years, and she thinks it could have been due to her COVID shots. Well, some people did have an adverse reaction to the COVID shots, and that's because it set up an autoimmune reaction. Some people had a heart problem or a muscle problem or a problem with their autonomic nervous system. So they found that their blood pressure control wasn't so good, or they got palpitations, or they felt dizzy, things like that, or gut problems. So you need to reduce inflammation. And definitely, if you do have long COVID, I'm a great advocate of the selenium and the N-acetylcysteine, and also vitamin C. Vitamin C is an incredible anti-inflammatory, and I always have about 2 lemons a day and a grapefruit, because I want the living vitamin C. I don't just want it from a tablet. And that's going to help your adrenals. Your adrenals have an incredible need for vitamin C. And remember, your adrenals produce cortisol, which controls inflammation. So, you may be low in vitamin C. You can have a blood test for that. But just by boosting it with citrus fruits, that can make a huge difference to your immune system. Get you over long COVID.
Yeah, I've got a few friends that have actually, were perfectly fine. And then since they had the COVID vaccine, two of them actually developed some heart conditions, and now like they can't, like, they try and go for a run, and they just like get these like really intense heart palpitations,
Yes.
on the verge of like heart attack, which is really worrying, because they want to be able to exercise to improve their cardiovascular health, but they can't. So
well, they should.
They seek help from their doctor, and they're just not really that helpful. So I'd love to.
Well, they should see a cardiologist and have an echocardiogram and a stress test for sure. But if you have sustained damage to the heart muscle or the nerves that supply the heart and control the heart rhythm, once again, you got to look at selenium. You got to look at N-acetylcysteine, coenzyme Q10, vitamin C, and these things take time to work. They can take 6 months, so you've got to be persistent. But I've seen a lot of people get over long COVID with the right treatment. So, send us an email and we might be able to help you.
And on that note, Anita's asked for your contact details.
Yeah. Well, if you go to liverdoctor.com, and support@liverdoctor.com is the email. Support@liverdoctor.com. We have a team of people, and I do answer quite a few of the emails myself. I can't answer all of them, but they usually send me the tricky ones. And we love to get your emails. So support@liverdoctor.com.
I'll put that in the chat.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that brings us up to an hour.
Yes.
Great episode.
Yeah. Well, autoimmune disease is really interesting, and a lot of people have a chronic smoldering autoimmune disease that they really hasn't been diagnosed. So, they might have vague symptoms. They might sweat too much and have poor sleep and get a foggy brain, have headaches, have indigestion, and check the level of inflammation in your body, have a CRP, C-reactive protein blood test. And if it's elevated, have a few more tests and, look at your gut health, your liver health, nutrient deficiencies. Perhaps you've got a hidden viral infection. It's very, very common because there's so many nutrient deficiencies today, particularly selenium, there's vitamin D, there's iodine. We pick up these deficiencies in so-called well-fed people all the time, and they're critical nutrients for a healthy immune system. I know for myself, if I don't take selenium, iodine, and zinc, I'll get mouth ulcers. Well, that's a type of autoimmune problem. And they're painful, so I remember to take it. So, a lot of us do need that nutritional support.
Great. Thanks, Sandra.
That emotional support. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, so last call, obviously not right away, but yeah, people watching this outside of the live stream, watching the recap, if you've got some ideas for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. We're always open to new ideas, and this live stream, this podcast, whatever this is that we're creating is ever evolving. So we're really keen to hear your feedback and want to shape it so we can serve you in the best way we can.
Yes, that's true. Great. All right. Well, we'll see you next week, Igor. So stay tuned to our website to see when the next one is. It could be next Thursday at this point, but we'll confirm it on the website.
Thanks so much, Sandra. Thanks for everyone for participating. Look forward to our next chat.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Well, thanks for being part of our webinar. If you have any questions or new topic suggestions, email us at support@liverdoctor.com. And don't miss our next webinar. Be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter at liverdoctor.com. Bye for now.